Okay, I'm very happy I can see you here having a talk before noon in the day after the party is also sort of risky that nobody is going to come, so I'm pretty happy you came here. I've got a few questions for you in terms of VR. How many of you have watched any VR video, like 360 video? Have you watched this? Awesome. Have you ever had an issue with motion sickness in VR? Anybody? Awesome. Or maybe there are some developers here and you had struggles with having the game running 60 or 90 FPS. I guess you recall such issues. So we faced all of the situations and we thought how we can overcome these challenges in VR, how we can even change them into opportunities. And this is something I will talk about, how we managed to design the game to overcome all of this, and what was the process of designing, and how we got to the point when we figured out the Wrath of Loki VR adventure. So who am I? My name is Robaszyński-Janiec, and I'm running the House of Fables studio. And we are creating casual and VR and AR games, and the studio is almost 4 years old now. But this is not the first studio I have, this is the second one, and I'm over 10 years in game development now. And for the last 4 years, I was focused mostly on VR, AR stuff, although the studio was running various types of games. So our main core business is creating casual games, casual adventure games, those type of games that your mom are going to play probably. About 70% of our audience are women playing hidden object puzzle adventure games on multiple platforms like mobile, Steam, even consoles like PlayStation 4 or Xbox. So far we have released a series of event-type games. It's Slavic mythology, and we are wrapping various Slavic myths and legends and put them into an adventure game. And upcoming game is titled Chronicles of Magic. So this is sort of different, but still fantasy game. This is pretty important in terms of the game design of Wrath of Loki. Further on, we are creating VR stuff. So absolutely the first thing we've came to the VR was International Space Station Tour VR. I found European Space Agency has created astonishing photos of European Space Agency created astonishing photos of International Space Station. They created 360 photos inside of the station. They recorded videos. Samantha Cristoforetti, the Italian astronaut, created videos explaining how the station works. And they created a website with this. It was pretty clunky and not that useful. And I thought, wow, that would be great to see the station in VR, actually go to space. And this was the first thing I created. Then a year and a half took me to get allowance and agreement with European Space Agency. So European Space Agency is a type of pinnacle of bureaucracy, and I know why we haven't had a moonwalk since 50 years, really, with such a bureaucracy. Second thing we created was Wrath of Loki. And the third one, and I will talk about Wrath of Loki today, and third one is Trains VR. It's 2 years in development, and we are going to release it pretty soon. Besides this, we also published other games. One of them is Strategic Casual Games Gardens Incorporated 4, and other games we help various developers to bring their games from Gear VR into Chinese headset Pico VR, and probably other headsets as well. So this is about the House of Fables. Now let's get to Wrath of Loki. So the question we asked ourselves before we started creating the game was, what actually drives us in games? What's the most important part of the game structure? What's the game itself? And based on our experience for years in creating adventure games, I will say that story. Story is the thing that is most important part of the game for us, and the story is something that drives people around the fire in the cave from thousands of years ago, when they were sitting around and they were telling stories. Stories were building societies. Stories is something that really gets into us, like intuitively gets into people. People love telling stories. People love hearing stories, from the small child who loves where mom or dad is telling the story to grown-ups who are watching movies and reading books. So even in our strategic games, we had story. They were story-driven. We had a superhero, like a regular girl, driving a garage and fixing cars, or we had a game with gardens and we were fixing gardens, but we had a story around it. So our heroes had a purpose in their lives, and what they were doing was driven by the story around it. So we wanted to create a game that has a story. Also, when we think about 360 movies I asked before, almost 50% of people, according to Oculus, are watching 360 movies in VR, and this is everything they are doing, nothing more. 47% people in VR are for 360 videos. So I wanted to somehow get to those people, to show them a story. Second thing is sort of an adventure. So you have you are actively taking part of an adventure. You are figuring out that you are somewhere, maybe on the abandoned island, maybe you are a traveler, maybe you are here in your office, but there is an adventure, so there is something you are doing and doing better and doing world better. One of our adventure games was a psychological thriller, which was actually happening inside of the mind of the heroine. So this was the second thing from our experience that we wanted to have, an adventure. So, and finally, we think that emotions are the thing that happens in the game very often, and this is the strong part of game experience as it is, to feel some emotions. Is this disappointment when we fail with the level? If this is something we are happy with when we achieve 3 stars on the level? Emotions are driving us in our life and in our game. There's also a theory about flow, so we don't want to get bored and we don't want to get overexcited. We want to go in the middle with emotions. So again, with our games, either Mindsners or Eventide, we always focus on emotions, so we wanted to focus on emotions in our VR game as well. So there are opportunities in VR around the things I mentioned that drives us in games. And in terms of emotions, the VR is called as an empathy machine. So nothing is as strong in any gaming as it's strong in VR. When you play any horror game in VR, it's way more scary. You are more scared, you have stronger emotions than any horror you are watching on your TV. It's close to you, it's approaching to you, and you physically feel you are inside of the experience. Same goes for other emotions, but it's very rare to have other emotions in VR, unfortunately, at the moment. And I do believe that with the evolution of VR experiences, emotions will be a very strong part of this. And sooner or later, creators will go through other emotions than only the simplest one. Engagement. This is another thing. We are engaging into the things we are having in VR because we are there. It's not something like we are sitting on the couch and only observing something on TV. We are actually in the world is around us, so we are engaged way stronger than in a usual game, flat game. And also because of this unsocial thing with VR, that we are closed inside the world, we do not have that many distractions. So if we are playing or watching a TV and our cat is going around, we may get distracted. It's not going to happen in VR, mostly, as we are closed from the outside world. We are completely moved to the other world. So engagement is very strong in VR. And finally, what we can do is we can explore worlds we will not explore in our lives, or not actually explore when we are only watching them on a flat screen. This is the part of the experience we have with International Space Station. You can actually feel like you are in the International Space Station. And the story behind it is when I was creating first prototype from ISS tour, and I was starting with Columbus module, this is European module. So every time I was trying to figure out if the performance is there, if the button is working properly, if the progress bar is working properly, if we have good shader implemented, I was starting with Columbus module. So during my journey to get an agreement with European Space Agency, I went to ESTEC facility in Netherlands, and they have a replica of Columbus module. And I went inside the Columbus module, and it was like familiar place because I've seen it so many times in VR that when I got to the real Columbus model, it was like, yeah, I know the place. I never been here, but VR allowed me to explore it previously, so I felt like it's a familiar place. So exploration is very strong with VR. But there are challenges. There is no free lunch. So we have to face the challenges in VR, and they are very, very big challenges. So this is Lara Croft. You might remember the one on the left, like she was way more beautiful than she was, but actually it was 500 polygons. The one on the right is 30K polygons, and it's modeled from 2008. And on Oculus Gear VR, you can have like 60 to 90,000 polygons. So you actually can have like 2 Lara Crofts in the scene, and that's all you can have. And we are in 2018, so we can have 2 Lara Crofts running in a VR experience of nowadays, which seems like models from 10 years ago. So 3D world and number of polygons, number of draw calls is a huge challenge for creating VR world that looks beautiful. Also, there's some few other things like stereoscopic. It's eye strain. So about 20% of people have issues with watching 3D movies with 3D glasses because they can't adapt to stereoscopics. The screen is on the same distance, and we can't accommodate, some of people can't accommodate their eye on the same distance and have this imagination of depth. So performance, eye strain, headaches, this is a challenge with 3D worlds in VR. Furthermore, motion sickness I asked you about. A lot of games, for whatever reason, create experience where you are feeling sick. And I don't want to create anything that will make anyone sick. Nobody painting an image, creating a photograph, making a movie is going to make anybody sick on the audience. And for some reason in VR, people are creating roller coasters and force people to feel sick. So I wanted to avoid this, and it's good to avoid this. And finally, availability. It changes a little bit. The prices are going down, but still paying like $600 and then buying a hefty computer for $1,000 or over $1,000 is a huge barrier for audience to get in, to catch, and to create a mainstream thing. So we faced the challenges, but we had solutions. And this is something that I would talk about. So first, we thought, OK, what's the most exciting thing we can do? And I guess one of the most exciting things you can do is becoming a god. So we figure out that Thor might be the good example. It's not mine. So we thought, OK, maybe we should be Thor. We have a Slavic mythology, so let's take Norse mythology. We are experienced in creating mythology, adapting legends, so let's become a god. Let's become a Thor. Not the Thor from Marvel movies, like a real Thor from Norse mythology. And let's face some real danger. So what's the real danger? What's real deal we can have? Saving the world. So let's save the world. So we have a huge goal. We are a god, we are saving the world, we are fighting with Loki, and there is nothing more exciting, I guess, we can figure out. I mean, there are various things we can face, but saving the world is the ultimate goal. And finally, let's explore the Norse mythology world. Let's see something we can't see in our real life. Like, probably we can go to International Space Station tour, maybe in 20 years, but we will not be able to go to Valhalla or to Asgard. And then there is a trick we used. We created a 2D game in a VR world. And that allowed us to avoid a lot of problems. So first things, we are creating adventure games. So I have a great team of artists preparing flat screens and drawing by hand beautiful images. So I use those people and their talent to create a world which is painted on sphere around you. And that way we are avoiding the problem with eye strain because it's not 3D world. We don't have any problem with aiming at 60 FPS because it's a sphere, so it's, we can convert it to cube. And with a cube map, we've got like 12 triangles and that's it. We added some 3D objects, and the thing is our artists created sense of depth. The sense of depth was so strong that we had, during one trade show, a guy with one eye only. And the guy said, oh, wow, it's the first time I've seen a depth because it was painted. It was not stereoscopic, so he didn't need to have both eyes. The issue probably with this is sort of like a payment on a painting on the pavement, so when you stand at a certain point, you see depth, you see things, but when you go around, it gets weird. So I will talk about this a bit later. Anyway, we created a 2D game with some additional objects, and we overcome a major issue with performance. Second thing, we have no movements whatsoever. The one reason for no movement is, as I said, you can't move around the sphere because this will fail and it will not feel real. But the other thing is, that way we are avoiding motion sickness. There is no motion sickness in Wrath of Loki, and we tested this game during various trade shows on over 1,000 people, and we asked them about it specifically, if they feel sick, and nobody felt sick. So we teleport from scene to scene, so we have a sense of exploration, but we do not have a sickness like we are moving around. We don't have any issues with cables bumping on things around you because we are standing still. Also, I observed that most people playing on HTC Vive in room scale, they are still standing still in one place. They are not moving. Maybe they are moving one step to the left, one step to the right, but rarely people getting into VR are moving around. And we wanted to create entry-level experience for people playing in VR. And finally, we decided to go into mobile VR, as mobile VR is the most affordable one. So if people are going to get into VR, I do believe that they are going to get into VR through the mobile VR. And the mobile VR is getting not only cheaper each month, but it's getting better. So it began with Gear VR. It cost like 120 euros, but you had to buy a hefty phone for probably 500–600. Later on, Google announced Daydream, and it was cheaper. It was like 100 euros, but still you had to buy a phone. Last year, Pico VR announced their headset for 300, and now Oculus Go is coming, and it's going to be very, very cheap. It's going to be like 200 bucks, so it's going to be very affordable. Also, Google is creating with Lenovo Daydream. It's called Lenovo Mirage Solo, and it's going to have some sort of movement around. So it's going to be mobile, it's going to be pretty cheap, and it's going to add some additional movement around. What's good for us in Wrath of Loki is that although the game was designed for mobile VR and hand-painted spheres, so it looks beautiful on mobile, we also adapted this game to Steam VR. And in Steam VR, we have a standing or sitting mode. We do not allow anybody walking around, and people are still playing it and having fun with the game, even though it's not necessarily created for Steam. And that's it. If you have any questions, I'm running out of time, but I can get a few questions. So, anybody?
Do we have any questions for Adam? Yep, lovely.
I'm Imran from Uxbridge College. Got a question about how do you interact with the, how do you standardize on the interaction for all the headsets? Is it just, do you have a controller? Do you, know how to proceed through?
So I believe the question is about how you interact in the game.
That's right.
Okay, so at first there was no controllers in the VR space, especially mobile ones. So the first version was just tapping on the side of your head. How stupid it sounds, it was like this, and we adapted to this solution. Later on, when Oculus announced a controller, we added the controller. So we've got sort of hand with a laser pointer. So you are looking around, you are pointing things, and then you are picking up. It's a hidden object game. So you're looking around, and then you're picking them slowly, rotating around your axis. And the same goes for the Steam version. You are just keeping one in your hand, and then you are looking around and pressing things. We can't have a grabbing thing, because it's still sphere, so the depth is artificial and it's only drawn, so we can't make a solid grabbing situation. But we wanted to create the game for beginners, so the easiest way for beginners is to give them sort of a pilot and click here, only one button.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Another round of applause, please. Thank you.